interesting how the discussion starts. It was in the 5th chapter at the very beginning. Sri Krishna was asked question by Arjuna, Sannyasam karmanam Krishna, punaryogam cha samshashi, yachreya etayorekam tadme bruhi sunichitam. Hey Krishna, you praise renunciation of actions and also karma yoga. Tell me definitely that which is better of the two. So you're always asking which is better because he is giving various options. And of course, Sri Krishna, in his usual fashion, answers the question exactly in the same fashion. He says, Sannyasa karma yogascha nishreyas sakarabhubho tayosti karma sannyasat karma yogo vishish. But in the first line, both renunciation of action and performance of action as yoga lead to liberation. So he says both methods are correct. And he concluded in the same chapter, Yat sankhya prapyate sthanam tat yogairapi gamyate. The moksha is gained by sannyasis, is also reached by the karma yogas. How did this 12th chapter start? The 12th chapter started with Arjuna asking question after having gone through the Vishwarupa Darshan, where he had seen all the expression of Bhagavan in a full form. And he was able to see a cosmic form of Shri Krishna, divine. And he also remembered how he was taught earlier, because he concluded the 11th chapter by saying, Mat karma krut mat paramo, mat bhakta sangha varjita, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, yaha samameti pandava. So, the one who does all actions for my sake, for whom I am paramount, who is devoted to me, free from attachment and free from enmity towards all, comes to me, hey Arjuna. And that's how it opens up the 12th chapter with Arjuna again asking question. I'm again confused, Sri Krishna. Evam satata yuktaye bhaktasvam paryupasate ye chapyaksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittama. So they are devotees who are committed to you in your saguna form, the way you showed me in the Vibhuti Yoga. At the same time, other ones are doing in a nirguna form and meditating on it, of which who are the better? Again, Sri Krishna's style is in the very first verse he gives the answer. Maya vesha mano yemam nitya yukta upasate shraddhaya parayo petas te me yuktatama mataha. So he says, endowed with unflinching faith, their minds committed to me, being ever united with me, those who meditate upon me are considered by me as the most exalted. So again, he answers in a clear-cut way that those devotees are the one who are dearest to him. Last time we thought we would discuss 39 qualities of a bhakta in 2 sessions. And it just so happened that I managed to finish only 7 out of 39 in the first session. Yes?
Is it renunciation of action or is it renunciation of the fruits of action? What is the difference?
Exactly, you're right. He initially described it as renunciation, but when he elaborated in the discussion, the clear understanding for each and every one of us is renunciation of the fruits of actions.
Okay.
That means you are renunciating, you're not stopping from working, but you're giving up the actions which are done for selfish motives. And if you're doing everything to serve others, even then you recognize that you are neither the doer nor the enjoyer. So renunciation of the actions for personal benefit and renunciation the credit of the action. Karma phala tyaga. So that's how the elaboration will be.
Does that equal sannyas, equals renunciation of fruits of action?
I'm glad you asked that question. That is very confusing all through if you read one verse at a time. But if you read 700 verses over and over again, then the one verse becomes clear. Sannyas and Karma Yoga should be separated in one way of thinking, and method of achieving something would be separated. What I'm saying is, sannyasi is a renunciate, it's a style of living. Samsari frequently or supposedly follows the Karma Yoga, that is samsari. So what we should realize, that we are all samsaris, that's one way of living. Other way of living is renunciation, become sannyasi, and also pursue the same course in the form of concentrating entirely on studies. So these are two lifestyles. How you accomplish the ultimate goal would be variable, and that's what he's describing in the form of jnana marga, karma marga, bhakti marga, abhyasa marga. All various methods are different, but lifestyles are two different. Sannyasi life of renunciate, and life of a samsari. So what we did last time is we completed only 7 qualities, and I'm going to give you, hopefully Ganga will bring all the copies of 39 things which are summarized, he'll give it to you, and the detailed illustration will come by email, I'll send it to Prasanna. He clearly described that the bhakta who is dearest to him is no different than himself. That's what exactly he explained. And he explained that in the 17th verse of the 7th chapter, where he said, Tesham jnani nitya yukta. Because he described earlier that Chaturvida bhajante mam, janaha sukritorjuna. 4 kind of people pray to me, bhakta. Those who are crying out for help, artha, artho jidnyasu artharthi, jnani cha bharatarshava. So there are 4 different. Those who are crying out for help, distressed. Seeker of security and pleasure, artharthi. One who desires to know me, jnani, trying to basically jidnyasa. And jnani is the one who knows me. And then he goes on to describe what jnani is. Tesham jnani nitya yukta, eka bhaktir vishishyate, priyo hi jnaninorthartham, aham sa cha me priya. Among those, the jnani, always united with me, his devotion resolved in oneness, is distinguished, special. Because I am very much dear to him, it is also very dear to me, because he is no different than I am. That's what exactly in understanding. We spent a lot of time talking about Advaita, Advaita Sarvabhutana. We talked about, that means he is no hatred about it. I told you the story about Dalai Lama, whose Lama was upset because he was upset with the guy who was tormenting him. We told you the story about a poor guy who was trying to follow the Guru's orders and trying to pick up the scorpion from the well and getting stung many times. We talked about the doctors in the emergency room who take care, with equal care, the person who shoots somebody in the robbery and the one who is shot by the robber. So that there is equal way of doing it. And these are the Advaita people. Yudhishthira could not find anyone with a mistake or fault. And Duryodhana could not find a single one who was worthwhile. Then we went on to talk about one who is really Mitra. He is basically Jagan Mitra. We gave various aspects of art, 4 emotions and 4 subjects. 4 subject matters are Sukha, Dukkha, Punya, Papak, joy, grief, good and bad. And 4 kinds of emotions, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, that means friendship, compassion, happiness and neglect. Okay? Yeah. Oh, good. Why don't you just distribute them? So you can refer to them one by one. Then he also is Karuna, we talked about, because he is full within. He is Ananda, Satchidananda. He doesn't need anything from anybody else. And when you are in that state of enlightenment, he's easily able to condone others of their acts of commission or omissions, mistakes they have made or they've forgotten to do good things. They're able to forgive you. And the classic example I shared with you is at the end of the puja, even though we have done the puja with absolute care and we think we are satisfied, we know inadvertently we make mistakes. So at the end, Prasanna, as you remember, we said mantrahinam, kriyahinam, bhaktihinam, janardha. So you're asking for Kshamasva Parameshwara, Kshamasva Parameshwara. And again, we told you the story about Kunti, what she was asking. When she was asked for a boon, she basically said, I don't want anything except wherever I'm born, make sure that my devotion to you remains unchanged, absolutely flowing. So even then she was asking nothing but love for God. And then we talked about person is free of I notion, nirahankara. What do you mean nirahankara? Sanskrit. Aham karote iti ahankara. I do it, that is ahankara. One who understands that you are not the doer, but it is being done through you as a lucky privileged individual through whom the good things get done, then you are nirahankara. Equal in mental disposition in pleasant and unpleasant, sama, sukha, dukkha, kshami, because he knows he is able to be at peace regardless of the pleasant and unpleasant thing, because he is full himself. So he is not able to be worried about anything else happening to him. And he is also kshami. That was the last one we discussed last time. And Prasanna, you reminded me appropriately, is one who is enlightened is able to see the divinity in every other person as well. So he says, who am I to forgive? And whom do I forgive? Because you are divine too. So whom am I to forgive? So that is the correct understanding of an enlightened person. That is as far as we went last time, only 7 qualities. And we'll continue as many as we possibly can as we go along. Hopefully I can finish the whole. Depends upon how the things go. Follow me. Santushta satatam yogi,
Santushta satatam yogi,
yatatma dridhanishchaya,
yatatma dridhanishchaya,
mayyarpitamano buddhir,
mayyarpitamano buddhir,
yo madbhakta same priya.
yo madbhakta same priyaha.
Now obviously he has no hatred or ill-being feelings towards anybody. He has a feeling of friendship towards everybody. And then that because of that, he is... Did we finish that part of it? I think we did, didn't we? We're talking about starting with Santushta. Santushta. Full of Santosh. One who is always completely satisfied. Now this enlightened devotee is satisfied constantly. Wait a minute. We all average people are happy sometimes and sometimes are not quite happy. That is not the case in the case of who is an enlightened devotee. But if you can just imagine in front of your eyes, with closed eyes, in your mind, the picture that you have seen of Ramakrishna Paramhans in ecstasy, the kind of happiness, contentedness on his face, that is the state of mind that person always has. Because he is contented, because like Kunti, he has complete devotion, in this case for Kali's sake. Why is it so? Prasanna in 55th verse in the 2nd chapter, he said, Prajahati yada kaman, sarvan partha manogatan, atmanyevatmana tushtaha, sthita prajnasya doshya. When a person gives up all desires as they appear in mind. Happy in oneself with oneself alone. Atmanya Atmana Trishna. Hey Arjuna, such a person is said to be one of a certain knowledge about his true nature. What we're learning in this particular chapter is, just like sannyasa and karma yoga were the same, so also values of a Sthita Prajna, qualities of Sthita Prajna, are very much same, very much similar to that of a bhakta. They overlap tremendously. Now, in Bhagavad it is said, Sada Santushta Manasa Sarvaha Sukhamayadisha Sharvara Kantakadibhyo Yatho Panat Pada Shivam. One who is wearing shoes is not bothered with rocks or thorns. So to the one who has santosh, happiness and contentment. Once you are happy, you have the protection against all the challenges that you come in your life. For example, this is from Kabir. Godhana, Gajadhana, Bajidhana, Auraratana Dhana Khan, different kinds of riches. Jaba avai santoshadhana, sabadhana, dhuri sama. So when you have santoshadhana, when you have that contentment, atmanya atmana drishta, everything goes up in smoke. Then one who is a yogi. What is yogi? Yogi comes from the word yujya. Yujya means to unite. That means a person who is individual, who has gained the knowledge and is united with the identity of Ishvara. He also means one who has control of the mind. And he's, of course, classically accomplished to the 8 steps. But again, the 8th step is the one which is important, where you're connected in samadhi, when you are the tattvamasi, exactly. Yatatma. Yatatma means one who has control of yatatma. That means atma meaning body, mind, intellect and senses. He's connected to control everything else. So he's connected with inner self and he manifests all the qualities of the Atman. That means Satchitananda. One who has Dudha Nishchaya, one whose assertion is firm. In that context he recognizes that self is same as Brahman. So he has no more Deha Buddhi left. So that's basically Dudha Nishchaya. Now, when we talk about samsara, ball of samsara has 4 threads and they are bundled up in the form of a knot. And because we are unable to release those knots, that ball continues to roll along from life after life. If you keep on, how do you release the knot? You like to pull one string this way, so hopefully it gets loose and you're able to pull it out. If you happen to pull the first 2 strings, Artha and Kama, only thing that what happens, that knot becomes tighter. The ball becomes harder and your cycle continues forever. If you happen to pull the 3rd string, Dharma, it resolves some problem to some extent, but it does not get rid of the fundamental knot, which is Hridaya Granthi, because you still have not got the knowledge. The only way the 4th knot is going to be solved is when you're able to get the knowledge, that means get rid of the ignorance, darkness, avidya. When that knowledge comes, the 4th strand is all open and everything runs very smoothly. So even if you are working as a karma yogi, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, all 4 things are flowing freely without any concern. But otherwise they are dangled up usually in artha and kama, tighter knot. Dharma loosens a little bit, but only when you get the knowledge do you have the 4th strand which is clear. Then we talk about Mai Arpita Mana Buddhi. Mai Arpita Mana. That means one whose mind and intellect are resolved in me, around 12. His mind is completely absorbed in his beloved who is God Paramatman. He is rejoicing in that ecstasy because Atma Swarup Ananda. So he is Mai Arpita Mano Buddhi. Then follow me, because I'm going fast, because everybody knows we have studied this over a period of time. Yasman no dvijate loko,
Yasmano dvijate loko,
lokano dvijate chayaha,
lokano dvijate chayah,
harsham harshabhayo dvaigair,
harsha harshabhayo yogi,
mukto yasacha me priyaha.
mukto yasacha me priyah.
Now he is not disturbed because of other people. Yasman no dvijate loko. He is free of elation, he is free of intolerance, full of fear and anxiety. That person is loved by me. Now why he is not getting disturbed? Kumud has always taught me that the others can disturb you if you allow them to disturb you. They can hurt you only if you let them hurt you. And you may think that they're hurting you if you're dependent upon them to put you on the pedestal. And because they don't do that, you may be upset with them. But if you know who you are, you're content with yourself, it doesn't matter whether they treat you with respect or criticize you. You are at peace with yourself. If they keep on blabbering, if you keep on spitting at the sun, the spit comes to the person who's spitting at the sun. So that person is not bothered. So yasman no dvijate loko. But at the same time, he is respectful of others. Lokano dvijateja. He is not disturbing anybody else even. He is responsible, he is cognizant of the fact that I should not disturb anybody. Doesn't matter what they do to me. I'm not going to be disturbed because I know who I am. But I want to make sure that I don't bother anybody else. So they are lokan no vijiteya. Such understanding is only possible if one's ego is totally resolved. Then you don't bug anybody. If you understand that only doer is God, nirahankara, you're not going to bother anybody else. Harsha mukta. Harsha, amarsha, udvega mukta. Harsha mukta. Free from extreme elation or exaltation. Now, once you having tasted the joy of Ananda Swarup, everything else becomes not as important. So what are you going to be excited about? If you have seen the best, you enjoyed the best, which has given you the greatest happiness, everything is pale in that comparison. So that's why it doesn't bother him or it doesn't excite him so much. He was seen better than that. He's very much at peace. He's without amarsha. Amarsha is kind of difficult quality to understand, very complex quality. Amarsha mathematically is equal to Matsarya plus Asuya. The Matsarya means if someone is able to do very well and is happy, and you appreciate those emotions in his behavior, performance. And when somebody is happy, has done well, excelled well, it invokes pain in you, that is jealousy. Very common, jealousy. One of the 6 major weaknesses that we talk about, Matsarya, between Vasishtha and Vishwamitra. Asuya is even further. Even if somebody is blemishless, they'll go out of the way to find some fault or the other in the other person when it is not. Fault may be there, but it is not important, but you still point it out. When everything else is good, you don't worry about it. Then they'll kind of concoct a fault or weakness or something and comment on that. You just have to remember that is asuya. That's why the perfect word is anasuya, because you have gone beyond it. So amarsha is a combination of matsarya plus asuya. So this person is well beyond combination of these two terrible weaknesses.
In Kannada there is a statement,
Uh-huh.
Ella jana tusa kona.
Uh-huh.
Kona is somebody who is like a buffalo.
Uh-huh.
Jana is a very smart. He's 99.99% is good, but that is the one you try to find something.
Exactly. Yeah, I can tell you, being a Maharashtrian, it's very common in Maharashtrian people. Trying to find out something, some weakness in somebody. And I'm sure every ethnic group has that kind of thing, but I'm just telling you honestly, I can see it. But I think you have to go grow above it. Then, bhaya mukta. Now, if you are amongst friends, amongst the family members, you're walking in a friendly crowd, you're not afraid. But if you walk in a place where people are not known to you, you seem to be a little bit apprehensive and sometimes afraid. But what he is reminding us is dvitiyat bhayam. Because if you recognize somebody as different than you are, then you have a tendency of feeling a little afraid because you are different. But if you see nothing but goodness in everybody else, you see nothing but goodness, you can walk through just about anything. Dvitiyat bhayam.
So if you are Drudha Nishchaya, then you don't have any fear,
Yep. Mhm.
because there is no other.
Exactly. And then he's also udvaiga mukta. Now, he has complete devotion, total knowledge of the Absolute. He knows that certain things are unavoidable. To have earthquake, to have hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, they're going to happen. You can't avoid them. The weatherman can only report them. I'm not saying that we need to be nonchalant about it. We have to take proper precaution to prevent harm to yourself and everybody else. Try to remedy the things when things don't go exactly the way you want them to happen. But you're not going to be apprehensive or upset to such an extent, why did it happen? Because that's part of natural phenomena. And if you get upset, that's udvega. And udvega mukta in that sense. He's able to accept those things, take it as a stride, and deal with them.
And he accepts death.
Yes.
Does it contradict that you have responsibility toward your body? Because we are the caretaker of the body, and to protect it is.
No, but I'll come to that in a minute. Because when he says Atma Ananda, so he identifies himself with Atman. So he's no longer identifying with Deha. He's no longer identified with the body. It's not that he's not careful about it, but he's not overly worried about it. He's a trustee, so he has a responsibility to take care of it. But he's not afraid because he knows, he's at peace, that he's never going to die. When it comes to the further couple of qualities, I'll bring that thing up. Good point. Follow me. Anapeksha shuchirdaksha udasino gatavyatah sarvaramba parityagi yo mad bhakta same priya. One who is anapeksha, expects nothing, who is not dependent on anything else for the sense of well-being. Since he is Ananda, he is not waiting for somebody else to make him happy, so he is not expecting anything from anybody else. He knows his true nature. He knows that he is self, Sat, does not suffer from delusion that he is alive only when the body is alive. Prana, which keeps the body alive, is dependent upon Atma. We talk about prana keeps the body alive, but prana is kept alive by the Atma, Brahman. Besides, Atman neither breathes or needs to breathe. Okay? That's why he's not worried, because he knows he's Sat. He's self-existent Chit, awareness, consciousness, and knowledge. So he's at peace with himself. He knows he is Ananda, that means whole, complete, full, without any sense of imperfection. He is totally happy and overflowing with every form of positive emotions. He has no external concerns of where will I live, because he is fully aware that everything that exists is located in Atma or Brahman only. He is the very basis of the entire cosmos. So he thinks, he knows that he is nothing but Adhisthana for the entire cosmos. He is Shuchi, one who is endowed with cleanliness both within and external. Cleanliness is both inside and outside. The inside cleanliness in the form of cleanliness of the mind, intellect, with loving and caring thoughts, unselfish desires, and sweet but truthful speech. Such devotee has a positive disposition towards others because he always tries to place himself into the shoes of others, pratipaksha bhavana. Thus he is able to remain caring and compassionate, and is easily able to overcome the anger, hatred, and jealousy. Because he is able to put himself in somebody else's shoes. Even if somebody has a diametrically opposite opinion, he'll try to go into their point of view and see. And honestly, every person's comments are important. And you have to accept them, whatever you think. But you have to accept it, only way you can accept it if you're able to see from their point of view. That's why the discussion is so very important. Daksha, one who is alert and who is competent. One is able to understand the things as they are quickly and is able to assess the situation and act fairly quickly, objectively and effectively. He should not be prejudiced by one's anxieties, fears or biases. In surgery something goes wrong, and it always does. You have to be prepared because you know what the possible complications and difficulties are. And then by the time the things have to be dealt with, you are quiet in mind, controlled in mind. Actually that's when I feel most comfortable. Challenge, quiet down, act, and then by the time the situation is over, nobody else knows that something was wrong. Only thing is you don't say certain words in surgery. That's not good. Just say it within yourself and keep going. I won't say the words right now. It's called oops. Okay. Now, Sri Krishna, since you are a scholar of Mahabharata, Prasanna, he used the word Daksha in describing Sri Krishna's qualities. Bhishma described it. He used in the context of Srushti, Sthiti, Samhara, Samartha, Sri Krishna. So he was describing Sri Krishna. In the Sabha Parva, he is describing who Sri Krishna is. Then also Daksha is described in the context of Smrutis, Shruti, Smruti, Purana, Itihas, Adi, Daksha. That means he knows all these histories and all the Smrutis and Shrutis. Opposite of Daksha is King Kartavya Mudha, Hamlet. To do or not to do is the question. So basically one who does not know what to do. And I think that is inherent sometimes. You're bought with that particular quality, but you can still improve by changing your attitude, taking proper direction and education.
Resourceful.
Exactly. You have to be exactly resourceful at the time when you need it. As a matter of people go prepared in the examination hall, and at the last minute I forgot. A typical story, he's not able to answer it quickly. But again, you have to get rid of it, you have to be daksha. Now, udasina is sometimes confused, especially in Marathi. Udasin is frequently translated as he's kind of...
I don't care.
Yeah, or at the same time he's kind of udas. He's unhappy. No.
Depressed, I think.
No, that's exactly the misunderstanding. Again, Sanskrit is so gigantic. If you divide into samas, ut asinaha idit udasina. Asina. Ut, because a comes in front of it, becomes sharp, so it's a do. Do becomes do. So ud asina. Ut means up. That means who takes high ground. One who looks at it in a higher perspective. He is not udas. He is able to remain neutral in that way and impartial because he is on high grounds, high moral grounds. Ut asin in that way. That's why Sanskrit is so very important. Frequently confused in Gujarati, Marathi.
Non-judgmental.
Not judgment. Udasi.
Is that
Udasi.
dispassionate also?
Huh?
Dispassion.
Dispassion. But again, was impartial. But again, more important than, it's a correct description, no question about it. But purposely divide ut asina for this reason. He takes high role. It's even more than just being impartial. If something is there, he'll go way out of the way to be externalized, takes the higher role. So udasina is to be taken in that particular context. Asina means one who is seated, ut means upper level. Gatav vyataha. Obviously we discussed this before, he is not disturbed by all any kinds of that duality, so he is able to control it. He knows who he is, he is very much at peace. Now again, sarvarambha parityagi, he was given up initiation of all the actions for personal gain purposes. You will put that in the bracket. Actions he doesn't stop, but actions done for the personal gain purposes are abandoned. Unselfish activities he will do, in the service of others he will do, but again he is fully aware that he is doing in the service of God. And who is also beloved to me, that means yo bhakta, yo mad bhakta, same priya. That is my devotee, he is my beloved, because in reality he is none different than I am as the Lord. He is the one with the knowledge of his true nature, and that in that knowledge he remains perfectly divine. Let's sing the next verse. Yo narushyati na dveshti,
Yo na pushyati na dveshti,
na shochati na kankshati,
Shubha
shubha parityagi,
Shubha Parityagi,
bhaktiman yassa me priya.
Bhaktimanya Same Priya.
Lot of statements. One who does not get unduly elated, na rushyati. One who is not hostile, na dveshti. One does not grieve, na shochati. One does not long for anything, na kankshati. One has given up good and bad karma, shubha, 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 ashubha, parityagi. And who has utmost devotion, bhaktiman. Let's take one who doesn't ask for anything, long for anything, no kankshati. The reason for that is the prarabdhas are divided into three different forms. One prarabdha is Ichha prarabdha. That means a desire comes in your mind that leads to individual's action, and you perform that action. Parichya prarabdha, somebody else gets an idea in the mind and requests somebody else to perform that action. That becomes parichya prarabdha. Example is, please, reading, writing, speaking, somebody requests you to speak, somebody requests you to write, somebody requests you to explain. So you did not mean to do that, but you are asked to do that, but that because that was supposed to be that way, parichya prarabdha. The third is pure prarabdha. It is neither desired by the person who experiences it or anybody else. That prarabdha can be ishta, desirable, pleasant, enjoyable. But more often than that is anishta or unpleasant, such as disease. No one wishes it, but it happens anyway. But this enlightened individual is grounded in good qualities, nitya sattvastha, also from sense of dualities, nirdvandva. And since he knows he is whole, complete, he doesn't lack anything, he is very much at peace. So he is not able to, he doesn't desire anything more because he knows he has everything that anybody can imagine ever. He has everything and more beyond. And because he has everything, he doesn't get elated unusually high. He is not hostile to the things, to the Nadveshti. And he does not grieve, we talked about it. Reason for that is, even if somebody in the family dies, it's not that you don't have the feelings, but the emotions don't take control of your judgment or your actions. We recognize that the loss like that is a normal part of the whole scheme of creation. It's not that you don't feel unhappy for a while, but that pain and suffering is not inordinate because dear persons are taken away from you. He has a clarity of vision as to what the truth in the life is, because those losses occur every day. Everybody is mourning every day, somewhere or the other. But when it's close to you, it hits you more powerfully. And then you start questioning, why me? But once you are able to accept the fact that is a part of life, it's not that you don't have feelings, but you are able to control it and continue to work what needs to be done at that particular time. So that is important to remember, the term of no shojyati. It's not that he doesn't have any discomfort or unhappiness, but doesn't behave in such a way that he has no control of the situation. Example. It rains in the ocean. When we sit at Cancun looking at the ocean, we see how the rain is coming from one end to another. Or the river enters into the ocean. The ocean is so full, ocean doesn't show any change. It's at the same level. When the hot weather comes around, sun is shining brightly, and water vapors start coming up and the clouds start forming, and some water goes, the ocean recognizes that's part of life. The ocean doesn't get upset because why did you take my water away? He knows that's the cycle. Water, ocean, clouds, rain, rivers, back to the ocean. So that cycle is going to go on. So he, enlightened as he is like the ocean, is able to accept everything and take it in stride. It's not that he is dead not to know what's happening, but he's able to control it within reason. He is Shubha, 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 Parityagi. Shubha, Ashubha, Parityagi. Shubha plus Ashubha, Bha becomes Va, Shubha, Shubha, Parityagi. He continues to serve the humanity while protecting one's nature. And these services are done in the spirit of serving the God. And in that sense, as Anand, you're asking, his renunciation is renunciation of the fruits of the actions. He continues to work, but renunciates selfish actions and renunciates the fruits of the actions because he serves in the spirit as the agent of the God. And how does he work? He works in that spirit. The perfect example I can give is incense is burning till the very end, turns into ashes, but still keeps the ambience enchanting, pleasing, peaceful, as if you are worshipping. Even go further, take the sandalwood tree. The axe is filling it. Even as the tree falls down, he's able to make the both sides of that axe fragrant. So that's, to me, is a perfect way of working till the very end, trying to help others till the very end, That's the main part about the Shubha, Ashubha, Parityagi. Able to handle with anything, any situation, but the spirit of service to God. Let's sing the two verses together. Samashatrau cha mitre cha
Samashatrau cha mitre cha
tatha manapamanayo
Pamanayo
shitoshna sukha dukkheshu
Shitoshna sukha dukkeshu
samasanga vivarjita
Samasanga vivarjita
tulya ninda stutir mauni
Tulya vindanitirmoni
santushto yena kenachit
Santushto yena kenachit
aniketa sthiramatir
Aniketa stiramati
bhaktiman me priyo nana.
Bhaktimanya priyona.
Now, samashatrau cha mitrecha. He is same in reference to friend or enemy because he sees nothing but divinity in them. He is not upset with honor or disgrace or somebody offers because he doesn't need any more honors. Shitoshna samadukeshu. Let me go back to why is he same in reference to friends and enemy? First of all, he doesn't feel anybody is an enemy anyway. Because he is able to see the divinity in everybody else. So if he respects himself, he respects everybody else equally. That's where he is able to handle the man and apman, honor and disgrace. He doesn't make difference. He is able to behave that way because I'm repeating the same term because he is peace with himself, contented with himself, atmanye atmanatushta. He is shitoshna sukha dukkheshu sama. His mind is balanced and controlled, undisturbed. As I mentioned to you earlier, he takes everything in his stride because he knows whatever is going to happen in the prarabdha, takes it. Whatever is supposed to happen in this present birth, he takes it.
He said that in the beginning it's Adveshta,
Yeah.
Sarvabhutana.
Yeah.
When you have Adveshta Sarvabhutana, actually then Samashatrau cha mitre cha
It's kind of
is
repeated.
automatic.
But exactly the point is, you are a professor, so you certainly know. The teacher states the initial statement and keeps on repeating the same things. A sandalwood, when it is on a stone, it has to be done umpteen number of times before that water which is in the glass turns into a sandalwood paste. That's why it's no wonder that Shri Krishna repeats exactly as you said again and again. Again, Sangha Vivarjita, that means he is not dependent on other things or activities to make him happy. He doesn't have any emotional dependence upon the people or the things or the situations or activities. Tulya Ninda Stuti, individual equal praise and censure. Mauni, it's a good word. Mauni is not the one who doesn't talk. His speech is well disciplined and measured. He talks in a measured way. He says exactly what he means. And he may talk easily or reluctantly depending upon the individual's personality. But when he talks, only when it is going to be fruitful, judicious, and only when called for. Perfect example is my wife. She doesn't talk much, but when she talks, everybody listens. So that is Mauni. So she's not Mauni, but that's what she behaves. Santushto yena kenachit. Satisfied by whatever he gets, because what else can he go to get anymore? He knows his own nature. Aniketaha, one who has no place,
Calls his own.
that he calls it home. Of course he has good place. I mean, everything is his. But he doesn't call this as mine. Even your home, as we mentioned last time, he knows that he's a trustee of that house. He's been given a privilege to enjoy it. He owns nothing. The squirrels, the birds, animals own everything. They also are trustees. But what I'm trying to say, you're given a responsibility to take care of particular things. As a matter of fact, to ask one of the comments that you made earlier, even the body that is given to you you're a trustee of it. And he knows that even though I'm staying in this body, I'm still aniketa. You understand what I mean? Because that's not my permanent residence anyway, so I don't own anything. So he's nothing that you can call you as your own. And sthiramatir, again he completes the circle. That one whose knowledge is firm and well grounded. And sthiramatir you can translate as sthita prajna if you like. And Bhaktiman mein priyo nara. Since I love Sanskrit, I like to use Sanskrit language to elaborate on it. Bhaktiman mein priyo nara, and whose devotion is beloved to me. What is nara? In Sanskrit, na riyate iti nara. What do you mean by that? None who does not die is nara. So when you get the knowledge, narka narayan ho jata hai. Because you understand who you are. And when I say narka narayan ho jaye, because you understand the Sanskrit meaning of na riyate iti nara, you get the knowledge, na riyate iti nara. You recognize your identity is Tattvamasi. In that process, with that knowledge, he remains in his Atmanye Vatmana. So, his devotion is Jnana Swarupa Bhakti. That means devotion we call it, but based upon the knowledge about oneself and everything else, in that spirit he is connected. It's kind of connected, doesn't move anymore because he is already there. And then he says, follow me. Ye tu dharmyamrutamidam yathoktam pariyupasate shraddhadhana matparama bhaktasте tiva me priya. Ye tu dharmya amrutam idam yathoktam. However, those who follow this life, ye tu dharmya amrutam idam yathoktam pariyupasate, with dharma leading to immortality, as was told. So he said, if you take two of them, ye tu dharmya amrutam idam yathoktam pariyupasate. If you take that complete sentence, however, those who follow this life with dharma leading to immortality, as was told, pariyupasate, the way I have told. Shraddhadhanaha, Visarga is gone because of the samas again, who are endowed with utmost devotion, Shraddha. Mat paramaha, for whom I am the ultimate, those devotees are extremely beloved to me. Bhaktaha te ativa me priyaha. Okay, so those devotees are extremely beloved to me. Now the key is that knowledge has to come through the grace of Ishwar. So Ishwar Kripa is essential. But Ishwar Kripa comes on you by gaining the knowledge from Shastra, so Shastra Kripa, taught by an enlightened Guru, Guru Kripa. So that is passed on. The grace, divine grace, by parampara, following through the scriptural knowledge, the Guru passes on to the disciple. And in that knowledge, that individual has the Atma Kripa, because he is contented himself in the knowledge of the meaning of Atman, who he is. So it starts with Ishwar Kripa, Shastra Kripa, passed on through Guru Kripa. In that knowledge, individual has the Atma Kripa and is content in that particular spirit. Now, in the conclusion, I just want to comment a couple of things and then I want to ask comments and questions from the group. Now, at the very beginning of this chapter as we started, he started with Akshara, talking about Avyaktam Paryupasate, Nirgunam. And Shankaracharya in his Bhashya emphasizes that Nirguna Brahman is the ultimate. That's what he talks about. But many of the scholars who follow Shankaracharya do not remind themselves The Shankaracharya started something else in addition. What did he start? He was the one who was trying to bring the community, Hindu community together in India at that time. There was an uprising of Buddhists. They were upset because rituals were getting popular. Brahmins were behaving badly. Some of the people who were falling prayers to Shakti, so Tantric Puja was getting prevalent. So people were going in 25 different directions. So everybody was Hindu, so-called, but they're following various paramparas. But what Shankaracharya was able to do, or something that we should remember it, is that he started Panchayatana Puja, very common in Maharashtra. And Panchayatana Puja is Vaishnavites, as Ramanuja emphasized, talked about, Ramanuja described, as I discussed last time, that it has to be Saguna Puja, and he emphasized Vishnu is ultimate deity, which is fine. And again, it's not that he disagreed with Shankaracharya. He agreed Brahman and Atman are the same, but don't say that you are exactly the same because it might get to your head. But really speaking, Ramanuja should have reminded ourselves that if you really understand who you are, it will never get to your head. But anyway, but he emphasized on Saguna Bhakti and Vaishnava Puja. Then other people followed Shiva Puja, became Shaivites. Those people Tantric, they became Shaktas, Shakta Puja. But what Shankaracharya did, and that's what I'm trying to emphasize for myself, so Panchayatana Puja, he brought regular puja for everybody with 5 deities. Vishnu, Shankar, Devi, Surya and Ganesha. So what he said, whatever you want to do is fine. Keep all those 5 deities in your place of worship, in the altar. What is your favorite, give the central position. But keep the other ones there too. Because divinity is both masculine and feminine, so Devi is important. Divinity is a cycle of birth, growth, decay, disease and death, so both Vishnu to sustain it and Shiva to recycle it are equally important. We live in the solar system, as we discussed Gayatri Mantra last time, so that sun is very important. And in order to maintain ourselves obstacle free, you need Ganesha, because he's always given the first recognition among the gods. So he started the Panchayatana Puja. And really speaking, when we talk about Smartas, those who believe in Smriti, Shruti, Puranokta, those who believe in Shruti and Smriti, starts from the word Smriti, and that is the one which is passed on to us. So that's the reason in our temple, we got all forms of divinity. At the same time, we are able to recognize that God is only one. And simple word is for a person is a person who is enlightened knows who he really is. He knows his nature as Satchidananda. At the same time, he also recognizes the divinity of everybody else. And this again for you, Arun. Ayam nijaha paro vetti. This is mine. This is yours. Don't compete. This is Nande's card. Somebody else's child, I don't want that crying. My child is mine. Ayam nijaha paro vetti. Ganana laghu chetasa. That is how the people who are narrow-minded, they are thinking. Laghu chetasa, narrow-minded. Udara charitanam tu. Those who have big hearts, open hearts. Vasudhaiva kutumbam. For them, the entire world is their family. Because they don't see any difference in anybody else. They see everybody else exactly the same as they are. Whom am I to forgive you and whom am I forgiving? In that spirit, they are very much at peace. Since they are enlightened, they know they need nothing, they are at peace. They don't desire anything else. They are not jealous of anybody else. What else is he going to get from anybody else? And if somebody else jealous and abusing, it doesn't bother him because he says, that's fine. I mean, he'll grow up, that's okay. I mean, if a child doesn't behave properly, what do you do as a grandfather? He'll grow up. You understand what I mean? You're able to forgive them, let them go. this person has a potential. That's not a problem. So that is exactly the way I want to conclude this particular discussion. I want come on, person. Come on, go ahead.
Krishna's characterization of Sthita Prajna, one who is well established in wisdom. Then throughout the Bhagavad Gita, he talks about Karma Yogi here, there and everywhere. Main point is that he acknowledges presence of Ishvara, he has Samatva, and he is Ishvararpana Buddhi. And then in chapter 12, he characterizes Bhakta. Chapter 13, Amanitvam, Adambitvam, he characterizes a Gnani. If you look at the characteristics of a Sthita Prajna, of a true Karma Yogi, a Gnani, and a Bhakta, I don't see any difference. Which leads me to believe, as Shankara has said, and he himself is an example, just because I'm a Gnani doesn't mean I'm not a Bhakta. So, Gnana deepens your Bhakti, and Bhakti deepens your understanding. The two are together. So so sometimes when you start reading it, you find, I'll follow Bhakti Yoga because Jnana Yoga is very hard.
Yeah.
I can never be a Sthita Prajna. But if you examine very carefully Bhakti Yoga, that is no piece of cake either. There's no piece, because I might say, I believe in you, I have complete faith in you, I am your Bhakta. That's not enough. What is important is how you project that understanding of bhakti, that understanding of jnana, that understanding of karma yoga in dealing with others. If you are a miserable person to everybody, I don't care if you go to 100 temples, if you do all kinds of pujas, it makes no difference. It has no value. The value of the value comes in when you see the value of it yourself. If you see the value, then you want to project that value. It comes automatically. You don't have to create artificially. In other words, you're yourself. You're not somebody else. Atmani eva atmana zushtaha. So, as my grandmother used to say, don't judge people by how many temples they visit, how much to judge them by how they treat you.
Exactly.
If they don't treat you well, it doesn't matter what you do.
Exactly.
And you're not going to treat you well in the sense of a gnani, in the sense of a karma yogi, in the sense of a bhakti yogi, unless you have that yo mam pashyati sarvatra, sarvancha mayi pashyati. One who sees me in everything and everything in me, he is the one who truly sees. He is the gnana chakshu. So, chapter 12 reinforces all the things that we have learned before. And it's okay if you just want to follow chapter 12 as a bhakti yogi, it's okay. But at the end, you will find etu dharmya amritavidam yatoktam pariyapasate shraddhadana parama bhaktaste vivaye. So it's a unifying type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the way we have talked about before many times, Prasanna, in order to understand even a single verse of Gita, you have to understand all 700 verses. In order to understand 700 verses, you have to start with one verse. So I think the key is over and over again. And we have discussed it before. He could have stopped after the second chapter.
Oh yeah.
Everything has been given. But as I mentioned to you, Shri Krishna is a brilliant teacher. He asks questions, he makes sure Arjuna asks questions to clarify the thing, they're repeating over and over again. As a matter of fact, if you see, for us as average human beings, we have to, when everything is going fine, we don't think about God or going to the temple. As we were kids, we went because grandmother went to the temple, and we thought that we were helping her to go to the temple. So to oblige her, we went to the temple. So that's how we started going. Then we grew up, and when we were going to the school, we went to the Maruti temple or some temple before the Saturdays, every Saturdays. Or before examination, you went there to make sure you got a good grade, you passed the exams. As you grew up, and when something bad happened, then you start screaming, like you call your mother, or ai, when you get hurt. So when you have a need, you're in distress, this is the first time you think about you need help, some spiritual help, to come to the temple. Then you find out that many other people are at the temple too, not necessarily for the same reason. And then you find out, go upstairs and find out people are doing pujas. And then like the Satyanarayana Katha, why are you doing puja? And then of course you can tell all those stories of Satyanarayana Katha. To get some reward, some prize. So then you start doing rituals because that's going to give me the positive fruit. So there are others. I want promotion, I want a good job, I want to get married, I want kids, so you do rituals. Later on when you start asking questions of yourself, is life all about, is all up there is to it? I mean, anything more than that? Then you start questioning, what is it all about? And then become curious, and again when you come to the temple, you find people with similar interests to learn, and you start studying together. And that becomes jnana, and start going inwards towards the adhyatma. And only when you study in the friends, why you have satsang? Satsanga is in the company of good people. But good people means you have to be in the company of people who have some knowledge. And if you go in the bar, you're going to drink all the time, because the company is of drunkards. You go to a smoking lounge, you're going to be smoking because everybody's smoking. You come in satsang, the people with good qualities who are interested in similar good things to learn, you maintain a higher level of being jnana. But as Prasanna, you rightly said, when you gain the knowledge, in that knowledge you remain grounded. Because you realize why the value of constant prayers and devotion is absolute must. So initially you have to have Shraddha. Shraddha means, it's difficult to translate, I mentioned, but you have to have absolute confidence that I'm going to achieve it. That's the first thing. You would have sincerity to pursue, to understand God and reach God. And the thing is, you have to be intense longing. I've got to get it. I mean, if you want to get something, we know that we can get it because you have to have that drive. But at the same time, as we have mentioned, walking in the classroom without a positive outlook that I'm not going to learn anything, then you're not going to learn any positive outlook. So ultimately, the Shraddha, which appears blind to start with, becomes dolus, is able to get a clarity of vision. Because then you realize that devotion was not blind anymore. That devotion is absolutely justified, grounded in the knowledge. So I think basically that's the way the cycle comes.